Verifying the reports on whether Muslims were actually, yeah. So, so is that even true? So I'm not questioning the whole thing. I'm just saying as an exercise, right? Based on this statement alone here, how true is it? Like if your only historical account was this paragraph, how true is it? Doesn't mention a source, exactly. Doesn't mention a source, doesn't mention numbers, doesn't mention exactly what's happening, right? So again, if we take that by itself, in by itself is not that useful. You look at other sources as well, combine it, we get an idea. It's pretty clear, right? It's pretty clear picture. But as a process, you say X happened. How do you know? Yaqub, what can you give an example from the hadith class this morning? Remember that the Prophet was praying Fajr or something like that, and he was reciting aloud, and people were reciting behind him. And then he said, "Who's competing with me?" And then it said, "Quote, people stopped reciting Quran behind the Prophet when he would recite aloud." Can you remember that discussion? Yaqub?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Can you explain for everybody else?
Yeah, yeah, it was a call from
So your voice
somebody.
is very quiet, Yaqub.
How about now?
Still very quiet.
So, yeah, it was a call from Ibn Zuhri that
Yeah.
basically saying that the people, that Sahaba after this incident, they stopped reciting the Fatiha, but he wasn't there, and he was 50 years after the.
Prophet ﷺ, right? So there's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
hadith which says the Prophet ﷺ says, "Hey, were you reciting behind me?" And they said, "Yeah." And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Yeah, I was telling myself who's competing with me." End of hadith. Okay, that's sahih. That has a chain transmission. We think that is true. The other part then says, and then people stopped reciting behind the Imam, reciting behind the Messenger of Allah sallam, in those surahs they recited aloud. So, as hadith scholars, and hadith and seerah is the same process, history is the same process. We say, hang on a minute, I have a level of conviction with the first part, and I have a different level of conviction with the second part. Because, as Sheikh Yaqub mentioned, Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, he wasn't there. So how did he say people stopped reciting behind the Prophet ﷺ? He wasn't even there. So when I'm looking at these two things, they're not, I don't put them on the same level. So I tell myself as a scholar of fiqh, tell myself as somebody who's trying to understand the deen, tell myself as a historian, as a mufassir, understand the Quran. I put this in one category, put another category. Here, we're talking about somebody who lives 200 years after the Prophet. He said, the Quraysh showed enmity to those who followed the apostle. When did that start? What did it mean? Is it even true? Right? And again, if we put supporting evidence together, yes, I think that's a historical fact. No problem. Right? And in hadith, we call that mutawatir ma'nawi, meaning multiple independent sources that convey the same concept. But in itself, this source, how reliable is it? Limited reliability because you didn't quote any sources. Okay? Then we went on and we said, oh yeah, Bilal was this, and the story goes here. Where is it? We looked at this Hisham, so we know who Hisham ibn Urwa is, right? He's an individual who's known. We know who Urwa ibn Zubayr is, and he says that his father Urwa ibn Zubayr said that Waraqa ibn Nawfal. Hang on a minute, the nephew of Aisha, like Aisha didn't even meet Waraqa ibn Nawfal. How did his nephew meet Waraqa ibn Nawfal? You know what I'm saying, guys? So you're telling me the story, yeah, it's a nice story, it's good, and it makes sense in general. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying I don't rely on it too much because it's not a complete chain. Hisham is quoting Urwa. Okay, Urwa is quoting who exactly? He just said, so Hisham, the son of Urwa, is quoting his father, Urwa, and Urwa and Zubayr in no way studied was there at the time of Warqa ibn Nawfal, right? So I'm not saying anybody's lying. I'm not saying it's actually incorrect. I'm just saying I don't know what's going on. It's not that reliable, that's all. Okay? Go ahead, Ubaid.
So I'm just wondering, if something like this, like if we know that, well, these two people could not have seen each other or lived at the same time, then how does something like this get reported, like as being part of the chain?
Is he lying? Does he make any statement that's a lie?
No.
So if
Well,
I said Imam Shafi said something, does that mean I heard Imam Shafi say it?
right. No, it doesn't.
All right. So that's why you have to be accurate. So this is actually, there's a subtle thing that actually happened with Hisham ibn Urwa. So Hisham ibn Urwa, he studied with his dad. Okay. He went to Iraq. He's from Medina. He went to Iraq 3 times. On his third time, you can imagine the people of Iraq, they want to hear, tell me something I haven't heard. Okay. Tell me something I haven't heard. So he used to say, Urwa said. So they're like, oh yeah, obviously, assuming that you heard him say that. It's not true. So what would happen is basically there's things that Hisham had heard from Urwa, and there's things that Hisham had heard from other people that Urwa had said. And so he's basically run out of things to tell them, so he's now just opening up a bit. And he's now citing things to them that are not so reliable, but he's not lying. He's saying Urwa said, i.e., he was told that Urwa said. So now there's actually a gap in the chain, but it was a hidden gap in the chain. Because everyone's assuming that when you're quoting your dad, you had heard your dad say that. So they trust you and they trust your dad, but they don't actually know who the gap is in the in between. So what happened then is then people would then come back from Iraq and say, Urwa ibn Zubayr said this, Urwa ibn Zubayr said that, quoting Hisham, and the people in Medina are like, what are you talking about? He didn't say that. That's not a real hadith. That's a mistake. And how did they get in there? Because Hisham was saying that somebody said, not that he heard. See that? So this is what, so is everyone following? Yeah, exactly. And so games of telephone make mistakes, right? Games of telephone make mistakes. So guys, look, we have to understand, even with a complete chain of transmission, you can have mistakes. Like you can have the best of narrators. So what about when you don't know what's going on? Like whenever there's a gray area, mistakes come in. Happens. Yeah. Okay, everyone's makes sense? Yes, of course. Yeah. And some people, who is it? Layth ibn Sa'd, the great hadith scholar of what's it called? Of Egypt. He went to Medina to Mecca and he studied with Abu Zubayr al-Makki. Was it Abu Zubayr or Ibn Jurayj? One of the two, I can't remember now. I'm mixing the two up. I think it was Abu Zubayr. And so Abu Zubayr, kept quoting, uh, who would he quote? He would he would quote uh he would quote Jabir, the Sahabi. So then Layth is like, wow, that's pretty amazing. You managed to study with Jabir, that's pretty cool. So then he went and he had a whole hadith collection of hadiths that he had narrated from Jabir. On his way back, he was like, hang on a minute. Did he narrate all of these hadiths directly from him? He went back and he said, I want you to mark, here's my book. I want you to mark all the hadiths you heard directly from Jabir. And he's like, oh no, not all of them. And he started marking them. So this is the world of hadith. That's why hadith, we were very careful, right? Did you hear it? Did you not? Did you this? Did you not? Etc. What's going on exactly? How everything organized, and later on as well, how hadith is written. In hadith is written, you'll find in manuscripts later on, checking, was this hadith you copied these hadiths out? Was it checked? So what you'll find in later manuscripts, the hadith will end and there'll be a little circle, and then the circle will be dotted. So you put a circle at the end of the hadith and you go back and you check with your teacher? Is it like this, check, and once it's checked, you put a little dot in the circle. So later on they say, oh, you didn't go through the process. This is not verified hadith. Or for example, they have spaces in the margins. So like this, you see these spaces in the margins, unacceptable because somebody could come along and your text is fine, but they can add a word here. So I don't accept that. You might 20 years later, somebody might have changed your manuscript. And now you're reading from your manuscript and it's got an error. Somebody's added something, right? So there's lots of criterion that they use, lots of different things they can use at different times at different places. Okay, but the point is being critical thinking, right? And we remind ourselves of the words of Imam Ahmad. When somebody asked him, what do you think about Ibn Ishaq, the author of this book? He said, he's fine for these stories. Meaning, what is the content that you're looking for? And what are you trying to do with it? I'm trying looking for content about what happened to Sayyidina Bilal. Like, hey, why? Do you want to know like how he was actually tortured? Okay, sure. What's the fiqh repercussions of that? Nothing. What are the aqidah repercussions of that? Nothing. So in which case, yeah, not a problem. Like no one's gonna come along and say, Astaghfirullah, this book is wrong. Okay? Actually, they will. I'll tell you in that a second. Okay? So the methodology that people like Imam Ahmad, people like Abdul Rahman, Mahdi, Bukhari, the fuqaha in general have is this just a story? Yeah. Okay, sure. No worries. Tell me stories. Right? The chain is authentic. It's not. It's complete. It's not. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Right? There's just pedanticism then. But Imam Ahmad says, oh, but if you want to come to fiqh, that's something else. You need somebody who's like this. And I believe he's put his thumbs up, like somebody who's solid. Right? So there's these different levels. Are you dealing with general Islamic law, Lore, and culture? Sure, no problem. Not an issue. Don't worry too much. Talking about du'as, you're talking about stories, it's not a big deal. Are you dealing with halal, haram? Like you're trying to change something? Like, oh, you do recite behind the imam, you don't recite behind the imam? We need somebody, we need something solid. We need something that's sahih by default. Are you dealing with aqidah? We need fact. Because we're talking about Iman and Kufr, we're talking about fact, right? I need something that is mass transmitted, could not be understood in any other way, not possible there's any area whatsoever. So there's different levels based on what we're trying to do with the material. Does that make sense? Different levels based on what we're trying to do with the material. Okay? Is this a tabloid? Is this Fox News? Just, hey, this cat said its name. Like nobody really cares if it's true or not. Is this a report to the president? Like, look, we're going to declare war or not? Like, we need to know numbers and the numbers have to be verified. Yes or no, did this happen? Did this not? Is it a court case? Is this reality? Like, look, electrons exist or they don't, right? What are you trying to prove here? Does it make sense? So we have different levels of different requirements for knowledge and how much sure we are depending on what we're trying to do. Does that make sense? Yeah? Everyone's fine. So here we have a problem, a methodological problem in the 21st century is someone's going to come along and write Sahih Sira. Why is that methodologically problematic? Sahih Sira. I'll try and find it. I'll try and find one right now. Let's find a book online. Sahih Sira. Authentic Sahih Sira. Why is it methodologically off?
Because in that case, you wouldn't be able to get the full picture because I think most of it isn't like fully authentic.
So here's this
They,
book, Sahih Sira al-Nabawiyya, Sheikh Albani. So Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was in Jordan, modern Salafi scholar, and he worked with hadith, okay? So he wrote this book, Sahih as-Sira. Why is it methodologically off? Because scholars never required stories like this to be sahih. They just said, yeah, it's not that reliable, move on. So along comes Sheikh Albani rahimahullah with a Salafi approach, and he says, look, if it's not sahih, it's not part of the deen. Okay, well, how has everybody always accepted Sira ibn Hisham? How did Imam Malik praise the Sira of Musa ibn Uqba so much? How does explain the words of Imam Ahmad? If you want stories like that, it's fine. If you want halal and haram, something else. So the methodology of Bukhari, Muslim, the authors of the six books, is one thing. The methodology of modern Salafis is another thing. There's a problem there. Okay? There's a problem. So it's one thing for us as students to question the authenticity and to be cognizant that it's not reliable. It's another thing to say, I don't want to read it because it's not reliable, because the whole ummah has always done that. They've always understood stories, tafsir, du'as, what's called targhib and tarhib, like good deeds. Yeah, no problem. A weak hadith, not a problem. Halal, haram, sahih, right? So Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah, he's applying, he has a new methodology. That's what it is. He's now going to come along and say, no, seerah is either right or wrong, whether it's sahih or da'if. When in reality, the way that the ummah has dealt with seerah is we are not basing fiqh on this. It's just a story. It's okay. Does that make sense, guys? Right? So the Bible, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, Hadithu an bani Israel wa la haraj. The Prophet ﷺ said, quote the Bible and it's okay. So why? Because we're going to treat the Bible as something that may be true. It's like seerah. If you look at the Bible as seerah, yeah, it's fine. Whatever makes sense in it, it makes sense. Whatever doesn't make sense, doesn't make sense. Not a big deal, right? Are we going to use the Bible for halal haram? No. Are we going to use the Bible for truth? No, right? It's just in that category of like, yeah, maybe. Here's a dua that might be true, might not be true. Not a big deal. Go ahead, Sister Sarah.
I know we went over this a couple of times, but is the reason why or scholars accepted like information other that's not just Sahih to give context?
Yeah, it gives context, it gives information, and also what their utility. What are they trying to do with it? Right? Like imagine, Sarah, you're teaching grade 3, okay? And it's the first day of school. Okay, and you're like, hey kids, everybody tell me about your summer holidays. And you're like, but make sure that your facts are verified. And so they're like, oh, Miss Shafi, I did this and this and this. Like, yeah, but is that actually verified? Can you confirm that with your parents? Like, isn't that a weird conversation to have with a grade 3 student? Like, you already understand that everything they say is not verified. And you're just going to roll with it because this is going to be, for example, you're going to use it for the language arts exercise, or you're going to use it for the whatever it is, right? Like, you're not, the utility that you seek from this piece of information is X. So therefore, you're looking for Y. So does that make sense? So what are you trying to do with it? So if you are trying to change the text, qualify the text, abrogate the text, that doesn't make any sense because it's not on the same level at all. But if you're trying to give context, as you mentioned, fill in some gaps, as you mentioned, it goes with the flow. Why not? Makes sense, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the way that
You're gonna buy a house, Sister Sarah, for example. You're gonna buy a house. You're like, oh, I heard that there's an Islamic bank down the road, and I heard that they've been okayed, and I heard that they do this kind of financing. Well, if you're actually gonna buy this house, right, you're gonna go and verify everything, right? And you're probably gonna verify things twice because you like, sit down, like, okay, A, B, and C, the first meeting, second meeting, right? So it's like this, right? Everything's very clear because it's talking about big money, right? But when you, for example, said, "Oh yeah, I heard that house prices in California are really expensive," and someone's like, "Yeah, I heard that too." Like, "Oh, you're lying. Don't lie." It's like I was just all I said is just I'm just sharing information, right? So sharing information versus making financial decisions are different. The kind of veracity that you need for these different things is different. Does that make sense?
yes, so would it be correct to say like scholars they accept levels of like Sahih and all of that based on what the science is being used?
Exactly. And you will even find in Sahih Bukhari itself, Imam Bukhari will accept something of a lower level because of the topic. So, for example, they'll have a book, for example, chapter called Raqa'iq, Imani hadiths, hadiths to do with, for example, that soften the heart, remind you that the akhirah is everything and the dunya is nothing, remind you should change. So the concepts are already spelt out 50,000 times in the Quran and every other hadith. There is no new concept. So what they all like, the criteria, the kind of hadith scholars, the accuracy that they're requiring is not the same. Whereas it comes to halal or haram, or specifically halal haram that is contended, I am trying to disprove another piece of information, suddenly it has to be on a much higher level. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So, for example, Imam Bukhari in Adab al-Mufrad, which is to do with character, is not the same Imam Bukhari as in Sahih Bukhari. Because in Sahih Bukhari is very, very high, whereas in Adab al-Mufrad is another thing. In another book, he has an essay on reciting the Fatiha behind the Imam. He has an essay. That is not on the level of Sahih Bukhari, but slightly above the level of Adab al-Mufrad. Because Adab al-Mufrad, I'm just telling you what you already know, which is how to be a good person. Whereas in Sahih Bukhari, I'm trying to prove something much higher. And in that essay, he's trying to prove a fiqh point which is contended, and so it's not on the level of Sahih Bukhari Muslim, but it is above the level of Adab al-Mufrad, right? Same thing now, du'as, right? And I'm not speaking just to Sara here, but to everybody in Ramadan. Oh, don't do this du'a. The du'a is weak. That's not how anybody works. That's not how. Pick up a Da'awat al-Kabir by al-Bayhaqi, by al-Tabarani, by any of these people. Amal al-Yawm al-Layla by Ibn Sunni. Um, the books are full. It's full of weak hadiths because the Prophet ﷺ may have said this du'a, so I want to say it. The Prophet ﷺ may have said this du'a, so I want to say it. It wouldn't make any sense to ignore it just because it's not reliable, right? There's no logic to that. And I'm not changing the fiqh. I'm not changing my creed, so why not? Okay? Does that make sense, guys? So, yes, be critical. Yes, categorize things. No, don't discount everything that's not reliable. That's not how the ummah has functioned. Okay? So anyway, that's what's happening here, and they're being we did all the story last week. Um da, 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 da. So I think we were here. Yeah. And who can also remind us about this? What happens here? Allah and Uzza your gods and not Allah, and they would say yes, to the point that a beetle would pass by them and they would say, is this beetle your God and not Allah? And he would say yes, in order to escape from being suffering. So what's the ruling on this, guys? If you're tortured to leave Islam, how does it work?
In that case, you're allowed to basically say a statement of shirk if your life is in danger.
Are you obliged to though?
You're not obliged to, but if you do, then it's permissible, and if you don't, then you'd be considered a martyr.
Okay, does that apply to pig meat? I'm on a desert island. I found that I realized that actually there's a boar on this island. So I'm gonna actually kill it and then wait till like I'm about to starve and then I'm just gonna eat it. Should I just die as a martyr and not eat it?
No, then you should eat it to survive.
Yeah, you have to. So there's a difference, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes under duress, you have a choice. For example, cursing the Prophet ﷺ, cursing Allah, leaving Islam, etc. Sometimes under duress, you're obliged to do that because there is no sanctity, or the sanctity of your life is more than the sanctity, the forbiddenness of eating the pork. So you're right. And there's other times, even if you're forced, you can't do something. Who can tell me? There's two things you couldn't do even if you're forced at gunpoint. Intercourse and You could do that. Suicide, yes, but more general than suicide.
Killing someone else?
Killing somebody or yourself, yes. So, so basically, someone puts a gun at you, said like, if you don't kill this guy, I will kill all of these people. So you're like, oh, well, obviously, I want to kill one person so that you know less people don't die. You can't do it, right? May Allah protect us in a case of rape. May Allah protect us. They say, if you scream, I'll shoot you. If you say anything, I'll shoot you. You scream. You kick. If you move, I'll shoot you. The cock the gun, gun to the head. If you scream, I'll pull the trigger. Look at this lady. I just shot her 2 minutes ago. Like you know this guy's gonna do it. You're not allowed to give up. You got to kick. You got to scream. You got to keep fighting. Fight. You don't have a choice, right? So may Allah protect us. They say that rape is so prohibited that even if you saw a kafir harbi, right? You see somebody raping Abu Lahab, right? You see somebody raping Abu Lahab, right? Men raping Abu Lahab. You still that somebody raping the devil took on human form, and they saw some men raping him. You still have to stop it. That's how bad it is. Like it can't happen, right? It's one of these things. Even the person who has no sanctity, their life has no sanctity. Like you could kill them, there's no problem. You still have to stop it. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's continue with the story then. So Zubayr ibn Ukasha ibn Abdullah ibn Abu Ahmad told me that he was told that some men of Bani, so again, change transmission here, Bani Makhzum went to Hashim ibn Walid when his brother Al-Walid ibn Al-Walid became Muslim. They had agreed to seize some young men who had become Muslims, among whom were Salma. Not sure why it's Salma and not Salama. I'm not sure why it's Salama is a tree, so I'm not sure Salma. Anyway, Ibn Hisham and Ayyash ibn Abu Rabi'ah. They were afraid of his violent temper, so they said, "We wish to admonish these men because of this religion which they have been newly introduced. Thus we shall be safe. We shall be safe in the case of others." All right, he said, admonish him, but beware that you do not kill him. So notice there is these two things that is happening, right? There is people hate Islam, but also the tribal system is very important. So if you just go around starting killing people randomly, and then if people don't defend their clan, then the whole system falls apart. You know what I'm saying? So that there's issues there, right? Like they say, for example, like I'm Swiss and I'm English and I'm American actually. So if you can imagine something happens with me in Malaysia here, the Swiss government might not particularly care about me, right? American government might not particularly care about me. English government, but they have to defend me because if they don't defend me, then other things could happen. You know what I'm saying? So there's lots of politics involved. You're like, oh no, no, we'll deal with him. Yes, but and So that's what's happening. Each tribe is like a citizenship. So they're like, hey, we're gonna beat up your cousin or whatever. It's like, yeah, but don't kill him. Because if you kill him, I'm gonna have to kill you. Because that's how it works. And it's not just a random system, it's a necessary system, right? It's a necessary system. There has to be this, like each tribe, like if the tribe system falls apart, then nobody's safe anymore, right? Then he began to recite, "My brother Uwais shall not be killed, otherwise there will be war between us forever." Okay, so how many times have we seen poetry so far in this book?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot. I asked one of my lecturers at university, can't remember her name now. I asked her, I said, was poetry ever sung? She said, was it ever not sung? If that's the case, if we see a lot of poetry and most of the poetry we just skip through, right? And if they're singing all of this poetry, i.e., they're actually songs, then isn't the Sira like a bit of a Bollywood film? Like, isn't this like a musical? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, they are bursting into song every 2 minutes. And if you go then, it's not just in the Sira, you just go into widest history. They'll say, for example, in this battle, someone so he's going into battle and he's doing this poetry. It's like they are bursting into song every 2 minutes. They are bursting into song and rhyme every 2 minutes. Uh, in Sahih Bukhari, okay, forget the Sira. They do the hijrah. Sayyidina Bilal is delirious because he's just come from Mecca to Medina and he has the what's it called? He has a very, very high fever. In his delirium, he's singing a song. He's quoting lines of poetry, right? So poetry just is just there. It's like everywhere. Poetry slash song is just there everywhere. It's just like rife in their culture all the time. Go ahead, Obaid.
I was just gonna ask, like, was the poetry accompanied by musical instruments or it was just
Yeah,
vocal?
there are accounts of that. So you will find so it's not very clear. Like we have to understand that they didn't have a civilization like ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, right? Like I think they actually found the music of some ancient Mesopotamian song. Like if you look it up on YouTube, like the oldest song ever, they actually have the notes recorded somehow. Because they actually the way that like ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, these are real civilizations, like ancient civilizations going back 5,000, 6,000, maybe even 10,000 years, right? Huge buildings, writing systems, huge agricultural things, laws, etc. Arabia is not like that. They're not as sophisticated. The words for gold and silver, who knows, the word for dinar and dirham are Greek and Latin. They don't even have a word for gold and silver, right? So it's not the same kind of thing. But they do talk about musical instruments. The oud, for example, which is like kind of I can't what we call it. The oud is like there's a word for it. It's like a medieval lute. It's like a lute, right? It's like a medieval guitar. They have these things, pipes they have, um, and they're certainly singing, but we don't know how they sung. Like, what was their songs like? What was the music? It'd be very difficult for you to mimic. Like, you could copy. If you can imagine, was it that film came out recently, the Odyssey, right? Like, if you want to make it more realistic, you could actually mimic like Greek music. Like you'd actually do that. Like, what kind of like, and particularly from particular areas, like we have art from certain areas, we have music from certain areas, scales that are based on certain areas. You can actually mimic the sounds much easier. With the Arabs, you can't really do that. It's pretty hard. Like what kind of scales did they use? What kind of music was going on? What kind of beats did they have? It's very difficult. It's not recorded, basically. Does that make sense? So that's a useful, interesting thing. Okay. And I wanted to share as well something else. There's something very, very human about the Sira because it's talking about a human experience, what places and all these names. And so there's something very human about poetry, something very human about legends. Okay, so if you go to any human normal place, they have stories that go with everything. So one of these things that, forgive my tangent here, but if you look in Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings is very much like the Sira in many ways, right? And what is Lord of the Rings like? Is like the legacy that created the world that we live in, right? Or the world that the world of Tolkien, right? Again, there's always a poem, right? All the elves have a song that goes with something and a reference to something, right? That's an old world. So Tolkien is not being influenced by the Sira. But if you think about the Sira as what's it called? A piece of literature and a piece and from it for its what's it called? Anthropological benefit. It represents the old world. Everywhere you go, this rock, what happened on this rock? Who was killed here? Who died here? What did it mean? What was the story? What was the poem? What's the phrase? Okay? Being Americans, like most of you guys are Americans, it's actually very scary because you live in a world that is divorced from history. Like coming from England, in England, everything in England has a history. Oh, this well has been here for 200 years. This what happened here. This church happened here. This castle, this. The phrase this, right? We have phrases that are unique, for example, to my city, my tiny little city where I'm from, right? Uh, um, and everything is connected. Okay, in the Sira as well, you could just look at it from an anthropological point of view. The stories, the place names, the individuals, the references to the what's happening before Islam, the cultural effect that I have going on. It's all one thing. In the new world, let's call it the American world, everything is different. Why is this road called this road? No reason. Right? Here's a street in the middle of nowhere. That is not what it was called for the last 1,000 years. It is not connected to the past. There are no legends, there's no stories, there's nothing. It's just new and disconnected and very scary and manipulate. You could manipulate it. What's the word? Manipulable, what the word is, right? You have to understand that with American history. American history is this new system in the world where people don't have a history and they don't have a culture and they don't have anything to live up to, right? There's nothing, they don't have an agenda, so they can be used. That's why America is used. It's it's a huge weapon used by other people, right? And so it's very, very scary. So you don't have stories, you don't have phrases, you don't have language, you don't have culture. You're just nobody. You're just nobody, right? And so read read Norse myths, read some ancient, anything ancient, it's going to be the same story. Every place has a story. There's language, there's myth, there's phrases that go with this. You have a continuation, a long continuation to something, as opposed to, hey, I'm just here, to buy something, you know, and this is what and this new thing, right? Does it make sense, guys? Okay, so forgive that's a more of an anthropological point of view. Okay, so he said, and then he says, "Be careful of this of his life, for I swear by Allah that if you kill him, I will kill the noblest of you to the last." Right? This is jahili mentality. If you kill him, I'll kill all of you. Right? And this is what protected the tribe in the past. The aggression is necessary. Look at aggressive animals, right? They stay alive, right? I have rabbits and ducks. They're actually both very aggressive. The ducks peck the rabbits. The rabbits are actually very aggressive. Got all sorts of scratches on my arm. They'll probably kill each other. You know, like they're actually very aggressive. Like nature is very aggressive. So this is the uncivilized, untowned, man is like you have to be very aggressive, otherwise you won't survive. They said, "God damn the man." After what he has said, who will want to bring trouble on himself? For by God, if this man were killed while in our hands, the best of us would be killed to a man. So they left him and withdrew, and that was how God protected him from them. Right. So you can beat him up, but don't kill him. Right. So now we're going to have the first immigration to Abyssinia. So when the apostle saw the affliction of his companions, and that though he escaped it because of his standing with Allah and with his uncle, Abu Talib, he could not protect them, he said to them, if you were to go to Abyssinia, right, Ethiopia, it would be better for you, for the king will not tolerate injustice, and it is a friendly country, until such time as God shall relieve you from your distress. Thereupon his companions went to Abyssinia, being afraid of apostasy and fleeing to God with their religion. This was the first hijrah. Again, no source. The first of the Muslims to go, no source. Notice he's going to have a very extensive list here, names, who went, these things. That's indicative of accuracy, right? Obviously, as a historical source, the fact that you're giving specific lists and these people really exist, it's indicative of accuracy, but also there's no source, right? This list is quoted 200 years after the Prophet ﷺ, approximately, right? A bit less than that. So the first of the Muslims to go were Bani Umayyah, Uthman ibn Affan with his wife Ruqayya, the daughter of the Apostle, Bani Abd Shams, Abu Hudayfa, ibn Utbah with his wife Sahla ibn Suhail, bint Suhaila, ibn Amr, one of Bani Amir ibn Lu'ay, Bani Asad ibn Abdul Uzza, etc. Gives a whole list there, right? So again, a whole list, no source. I'm not saying it's false. I'm just saying it doesn't have a source, so therefore we don't know if it's actually true or not. It is said, notice he uses this language, so he is also cognizant of this point. He's cognizant of there's different levels of certainty. He says, it is said, I've heard this, right? Others say, right? Notice, so he mentioned that, the editor mentioned that in the beginning, that the author is cognizant of the disparity of authenticity. And he's going to say certain things as fact and say certain things as fiction or hearsay. It is said that he was the first to arrive in Abyssinia. These 10 were the first to go, according to my information. Afterwards, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, and the Muslims followed one another until they gathered in Abyssinia, took their families there, others went alone. Okay, and it says, mentions these other names here. Again, all these names, Zubayr ibn Awam, and he's going to cut a lot of these names here. Now, why do you think these names are going to politically be useful? What's going to mean 200 years later if your name is in this list? Just from a political point of view, political and societal point of view. If your name is in that list, what does it mean? Yeah, prestige, right? And it could actually also result in immediate financial benefit. So in the time of Sayyidina Umar, I believe it was, they had the Dawaween. You were at Badr. You're on this payroll. Your son was at your father was at Badr. You're on this payroll. So obviously, this is important, right? This is pretty important. And what's interesting then is these lists. Our author, okay, we have to understand that. So we have the first political party that existed, Khulafa al-Rashidin, the second political party or the second political regime, the Umayyads, and then the third. Our author is writing in the third. He's writing in the time of the Abbasids. So just as a historian who's thinking very materialistically and looking at the objectivity of these levels, you could compare these names and try and find out who was materially benefiting from having this list, their name on their list, right? And see, does it add up or does it not add up, right? So was this some kind of Umayyad? Was it so you could tell us, I could help, how to say, support the accuracy of this and say that these people are all people that would be hated during the time of the Abbasids. So he's writing in the time of the Abbasids, but they might be listed here anyway. So then it would give us a sense that either he was anti-Abbasid or he was being true. Does that make sense? Right? I'm just again thinking as a historian, as a not looking at ethics and not looking at the fact that he's a Muslim and not looking at anything else. Does that make sense, guys? So these things you can do, like you can actually go through these things, and you may well find out, hang on a minute, even though I don't have any sources, these names would make sense, right? Because you might be able to find, for example, their son is known for this and has a title that or whatever. There's other evidence you can find. So there's lots of other sources we can use besides this book, by the way, right? There's also other sources we can use. Okay, make sense? Everyone's following?
نعم شيخ.
Okay. So then it says da. So we had 83 men if Ammar ibn Yasir was among them, but that is doubtful. The following is an extract from the poetry which has been written in Abyssinia by Abdullah ibn Harith ibn Qais ibn Adi ibn Sa'd ibn Sahm. They were safely ensconced there, and what does that mean? To ensconce? They were safely ensconced there. What does that mean?
It's similar to like they were stored there, kept.
They were. I know these people were what's it called? What's the word we could use today? Like to smuggled out of the country. They got there, basically, maybe the Quraysh were against them leaving, right? And so they were ensconced there. They managed to get these people out, evacuated. They were safely evacuated from the country and they got to that safety there. Okay? And they were grateful for the protection of Negus, Najashi, could serve God without fear. I could worship God without fear. And Negus had shown them hospitality, right? So apparently, here's this poem. So how did this poem even reach you? I don't know, right? And as we mentioned before, what did Ibn Hisham, so Ibn Hisham got Ibn Ishaq's Sira and tweaked it a little bit. One of the things he did with Ibn Ishaq's Sira? One thing he particularly critiqued.
Like the poetry?
Some of the poetry, yes. So he said some of this poetry we've never heard. So one thing is like, do you have a source? Do you have a chain transmission for this poetry? No. In fact, here's a question: Do we have like if you say, for example, has everybody heard of the Mu'allaqat? Right? There's these like seven very famous poems in the Jahiliyyah. Do we have a chain transmission for them? No, we don't. Like we don't have a complete chain transmission for them, you know? So there are things that are like that. So you say, fine. Are they well known? Yes, they're well known. Okay, so you know what I'm saying? Like there could be a story that's in a culture, you know, the a certain tribe of Indians, Plains Indians in America, there's a story that they all narrate. So presumably it's among them, right? But when they don't even know that story, like no one's heard of that story, then it's probably off. So he said basically Ibn Hisham is like, look, some of the poetry that he narrates, no nobody who is involved in poetry knows. Like this is like really random. And some of it sounds funny, the content is off, right? And it's like it's fishy, right? So anyway, is this part of it or not? I don't know. So long poem. So again, if you can imagine, if we look at the Sira as a piece of literature, there is a lot of poetry and quote unquote song here as well. Okay, and then it continues with other poetry here. Okay, so the Quraysh sent to Abyssinia to get the emigrants returned, right? So notice again, no source. So if you look at this, so if you can, let's be critical, for example, about the whole thing about Abyssinia, right? What you can start doing is just limiting down the whole picture, okay? And saying, how do we even know this? So, for example, with Sayyidina Ja'far, like with Sayyidina Ja'far, I think it's like mass transmitted that he went to Abyssinia and came back because you're going to see it. It's going to come. There's lots of references. So you'll be in Medina and there'll be people who come back, like Sayyidina Ja'far, like others who come back from Abyssinia. And there's new things have changed in the practice of Islam and they haven't been updated yet, right? So, um, you know, some of these things are like that. Other things are not. So these have this whole list. Was it 83 people? This, like, how do you know as a fact that that person was there? Okay, it's in this book. Okay, where else can I find it? You might not be able to find it anywhere else. You might not be able to find it. Or you can find it in another source that's also similarly weak, you know? So what we can do is with any, you know, if I just do a little diagram, right, with any kind of historical event, so be it Sira or be it anything, right? Let me just pause this a second. We can kind of like there's like levels of certainty that we can deal with, right? So like 100% fact, okay? Then you can have another circle, right, which is provisionally true, most likely true. How do I change this? Is that right? Nope. How do I do this? No fill. I don't have no fill. Oh, 100%. No, I'm trying to make it 100% opaque. Transparent. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to have this bigger circle, which is going to be, okay, I don't want to write it there. Provisionally true. Like, as far as I know, that's true. I mean, doesn't have to be true, but, you know. So you're going to have this bigger circle. I want to try and move the text. I can't move the text. Anyway, So I'm just going to make it bigger like that. Like there's a bigger circle like that. Okay. And then there's a bigger circle around that, which may 50-50, right? It's like 50-50, you know? Maybe, maybe not. So that's how everything is, right? So for example, did the Romans conquer England? Yes. Fact. There's going to be certain things. Did they build this in this year? Most likely, but maybe in the next year. You know what I'm saying? And then, for example, when Caesar came to England, did he really say Vini Vidi Vici? Right? There's this phrase, we came, we saw, we conquered. That's a phrase from Julius Caesar. Allegedly, when he came to England, it's like, yeah, this is easy. Right? We just Vini Vidi Vici, like we just came, we just walked in and took the land. Is that actually true though? Right? Or was it a bit of a fight? So, so fact, Muslims went to Abyssinia. Provisionally true. These people went. 50-50, he mentioned, I'm not sure if Ammar ibn Yasir was there or not. Does that make sense? Fact, you know, um, I don't know. Lots of things about it. Fact, the Prophet ﷺ was born in Mecca, died in Medina, right? Provisionally true. He said, Innamal a'malu binniyat. 50-50, he made this dua that is narrated with weak chain transmission. Does that make sense? So every single event we can do that, right? And some of these ways we're gonna the circle in the middle will get wider or smaller, right? Sometimes it can be different. And sometimes the thing in the middle is very small, like we don't even know as a fact that's true or not. Sometimes the provisionally true is very small as well, and most of it is just like, yeah, maybe, maybe not. Does that make sense? So it's a textured way of looking at history as opposed to fact, false. Does that make sense? Yeah? Everyone's following you? Sara, Hadi, Abdul Rashid? Good. Okay, so we'll stop here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك